Well, it's cold again to start the week. Good morning, Kansas City. 6:05 on a Monday. We are glad that you are here with us on 95.7 FM, KCMO Talk Radio. It is a balmy 2 degrees outside at Corporate Woods, and depending on where you're at around the metro, that could easily dip below the zero mark. Forget the freezing mark. It feels like -1 out there right now where we're at. But it's amazing how there was a little bit of a heat wave this past weekend, and I guess that meant the criminals could go out and start terrorizing Kansas City. I mean, it gets to 25, and these guys are putting on their Speedos and getting ready for a good time and lathering up going into the weekend. It is embarrassing what happened downtown, and I'm glad that small business owners downtown are starting to speak out about it and are saying more about it. So Kansas City businesses dealt with overnight break-ins over the weekend. And they are now, whereas I think about a year ago at this time, they would have been hush-hush about it. Hey, don't make a big deal. We don't want to scare people off. That's not happening anymore. You had multiple businesses get broken into over the weekend. And that was right at the start of Kansas City Restaurant Week, which kicked off on Friday. We had one of the folks from Restaurant Week on the show Friday. They were admitting that it was a slow start to Restaurant Week because, well, the weather. Now, this is an even worse start when you consider break-ins at multiple downtown restaurants in KCMO and also on the KCK side. But you had Seven Swans set to celebrate a 5-year anniversary, and they put up on social media pictures of their restaurant getting windows broken out. They wrote on social media, today is our 5th birthday to the day of our grand opening, January 12th of 2020. We are resilient, just like all of our other neighbors who have dealt with this insanity for the past year, but this has to stop. That is the post on Facebook. La Bodega also participates in Restaurant Week, was hit overnight Saturday into Sunday. 3rd time in 6 weeks the restaurant's been broken into. Their statement read, La Bodega was again broken into with multiple windows broken out. This is the 3rd time in the last 6 weeks. The city and the leadership must make immediate changes or lose all of their retail and restaurants. That's not like a, hey, we were broken into, we need some help here. This is literally a warning sign that is being sent and shared by small business owners in Kansas City, Missouri. They're saying, in part, we've had enough. Could you imagine 6 break-ins or 3 break-ins in 6 weeks? You're dealing with this nonsense? And what's the city saying? Well, the city passed that ordinance, I guess it was late summer, early fall, saying, yeah, you know, if you get broken into at some point, we'll kick in $5,000 towards some type of anti-theft system we'll put into your place of business. That's what we'll do. Kick in a few $1,000 where we can. Wouldn't shock me if the money from that fund is long gone by now with the amount of break-ins this town has dealt with.
Yeah, we've already used it all.
Yeah, we're out. Sorry. We'd love to help you, but we're out of coin around here. Spending too much money on snow removal right now, so can't really make that work. This is between the weather and now these break-ins being the story, one of the stories of the weekend as they kick off Kansas City Restaurant Week. This is horrible. And it's why, and I've said it for as long as these break-ins have continued to get worse and worse and worse, you need the Chamber of Commerce to step up, grow a backbone, grow a pair of something else, and start standing up for the small businesses in this community. All they want to do, and I mean the people in charge and the heavy hitters in the Chamber of Commerce, all they want to do is protect big business, not small business. All they want to do is make sure the cocktail parties go well, hobnob, rub elbows with city leaders, and not actually give them grief when they're failing the businesses in this community. And while we see the headlines coming out of 2024 about how you look at the homicide rate being down 20%, fantastic. Less people are dying. That's great. We still have more non-fatal shootings. They're up. we have now this rash of business break-ins all over Kansas City, Missouri in particular, and there is not an answer. I mean, there is an answer, but the answer is more of a long-term answer. The answer is now getting the new prosecutor to work. The answer is getting the number of cops up. The answer is building a good rapport between law enforcement and prosecution. All those things are going to take time to develop. They don't happen overnight. And that's why if you are one of these small business owners in Kansas City, Missouri, specifically in the restaurant industry, you are in a very difficult position right now. And I don't envy you. Never mind all the issues you got to deal with how the restaurant industry is going. Food prices continuing to skyrocket, cost of labor going up. It's a mess right now. It's an absolute mess. 913-408-7957. That's the text line and the studio line as we kick it off on a Monday morning. Pete, I can't wait for the Royals to move downtown to their new stadium. Very well done. That's why you're starting to hear more rumors about the Royals looking elsewhere, like in Johnson County. It's not just about star bonds. I know people want to say it's all about the star bonds. It's not. It's also about not putting yourself in a position as a business, and that's what the Royals are deep down. It's not just a little sports team that plays a little baseball 81 times a year here in Kansas City, hopefully more with the playoffs. What it also is about realizing, where do my customers want to go and where do they not want to go? And this is why stories like this do not want to be highlighted by Chamber of Commerce folks and by city leaders, because it will ultimately scare off the Royals. And that's where the Royals have to say, well, where are people going to go? Are we really going to put ourselves in a lawless position potentially downtown? We don't want to do that. Although I will say this much, if the tax had passed, the Royals would have willingly put themselves in the crossroads. So let's not give them too much credit, right? Like, let's not act like the Royals are really looking out for the safety of their customers here, because if Jackson County voters had voted on that sales tax last spring, well, they'd be building down in the crossroads as we speak right now. So I'm not going to give them too much, but that's a very good point. If they continue to go through this process and just say, you know what, if we have a blank slate and we can't rely on a Jackson County sales tax, does anywhere in Jackson County really make the most amount of sense? At least when it comes to safety, the answer is no. Because they were looking at a situation like a downtown ballpark that is different from Arrowhead. I mean, Arrowhead's on its own island. The whole Truman Sports Complex is on its own island. The crime anywhere in Kansas City doesn't permeate the grounds of the Truman Sports Complex. It's gated off. You got to pay to get in, the whole deal, right? But if you set yourself up in a downtown stadium, totally different. Anyone can walk by. Anyone can walk around. I mean, that's the whole point of having a downtown stadium. There are downsides to that as well. Also on the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, just like California, people know they are not going to be prosecuted. And yes, you are seeing the theft take off in California in the wake of these wildfires as well. And well done on the text line, because you're teasing into my next topic. That's outstanding work on the text line. Very well done. Got to give him a hand at 6:14 on a Monday morning with it being 2 degrees outside. That's great. Yes, nice job. So coming up, Gavin Newsom is now dealing. Now, the wildfires are still raging, but you are having looting taking place. That's a major issue right now in some of these neighborhoods around California where people have been asked to evacuate. Well, what are they doing about it? And isn't just the way this is playing out another sign of failure by political leadership? It's not even up for debate. And I've got the audio of that and the response to it coming up next on 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio. Well, all eyes are still on California as we monitor that ongoing tragedy, and it really is a tragedy. I mean, you're seeing at least $50 billion in damage. You are seeing what is potentially going to be upwards of $100 billion in damage. You have a dozen people who have now lost their lives. And we do have a donate now button on our homepage, KCMOTalkRadio.com. You can donate to the American Red Cross. It's in our partnership with Cumulus Media, American Red Cross, and it all goes towards wildfire relief. So we're happy to help out in any small way. And listen, I know that there is an incredible amount of political incompetence that exists in California. But the people who are dealing with losing everything don't deserve that. Nobody does. Now, you hope that a political lesson is learned here, right? I mean, that's indisputable. You hope, and how could you not hope, that people learn a political lesson in all this? But at the same time, when you deal with people who have lost every single thing that they own. I mean, you may remember the name Heidi Montag and Spencer Pratt from The Hills. Remember? Oh, you were a big Hills fan, John?
We were talking about MTV the other day and when they used to show music and then they went to just showing shows. Yeah, that's one of those.
It is one of those. The Hills was obviously a very popular show 15, 20 years ago. Heidi Montag came out of that as one of the stars. Her and her husband, Spencer Pratt, he was in the show. I didn't realize they were still together. He's lost everything. I mean, he literally, I saw him do a selfie video where his home was, and all that's left is the washer and dryer burnt out. And he goes, well, guess I'm not washing any clothes in here anytime soon. I was like, he kept his sense of humor. I give him that much. And what you've got now is obviously, I mean, these fires are still ongoing. You're talking about 40,000 acres that have been burnt across Southern California. They're still fighting them down there. But Gavin Newsom is now trying to figure out how to push back on the looting that is taking place. They put in curfews late last week. I think that kicked in on Friday. And then he was talking to the media over the weekend, and I want to play this clip, and if you could play this, Mark, since my system's down again, of Gavin Newsom talking about how he wants to make sure nobody's looting around California.
Have to keep people safe, no looting, zero tolerance for looting. That's why these guys are out here, and I'm very grateful for them, particularly at these critical checkpoints that allow law enforcement to move more mobily and do interior work.
So that's Gavin Newsom. And he was very soft-spoken in this interview, saying that he wants to make sure nobody is looting. That's why they've got cops out there. That's why they've got curfews out there over the weekend. But at the same time, you've got to remember that it was the state of California that literally decriminalized looting. And then California residents, this past election cycle, passed a law that basically brought back the ability of the police to criminalize people who were looting things and stealing less than $950 worth of materials or whatever it might be. The California residents had to basically put that law back into place because the state had gone so far to the left on the issue of looting. So you had, especially in most of your major cities, I mean, you know, you'd see the videos on social media. We'd share some of the stories once in a while on this show, where groups of people would walk into stores and just, as long as they took less than $950 worth of stuff, they'd be well on their way. And now you've got the governor saying we're not going to stand for looters. Well, I'm glad he's not going to stand for looters. You got to protect your people. That's literally the job of the governor in this situation. You're dealing with a natural disaster, with a crisis. You are telling people they have to leave their homes. Well, if you're going to tell them to do that, you better have a plan to protect those houses. If the government's going to force you to leave your home, then the government in this case has to be in charge of protecting your home. And it took them a while to catch up because you had news reporters last week talking about how you had criminals running wild. I mean, they were just running all over neighborhoods. If we could go back, Mark, to Friday, KTLA had this report on looting in Los Angeles. This is from Friday, January the 10th.
I was getting my whole family out. All you have in your mind is just you're in survival mode at that point. I saw men coming into our neighborhoods. Police confirmed it. She had this to say. Take a listen.
It was wild. We just started seeing all these cars pull up, doors open, and groups of men running up our street, going up to the doors of these houses. And we weren't sure what was going on. I'm thinking, are these people here to help my neighbors? I hope so. And I left, and then my husband talked to the police and said, what are those guys doing? These guys don't live here. Get them out. My next door neighbor said, his quote, there were like 100 people that came up on scooters and were trying to get into any and all houses on the street.
And did you physically see police officers stopping them?
I didn't, but it's not to say that they weren't. It was so incredibly chaotic, and I was so worried about my big family and getting them out of our old tinderbox of a house that I was just focused on them first.
Well, most importantly, I hope those scooters were electric. Got to save the environment if you're going to loot. Want to make sure everybody's taken care of on that front. So, oh my goodness. But that's what was happening last week in California. And I do believe that voters are waking up. Not that California is going to be what it was during the Reagan heyday, but just realizing, like, it's okay to be a Democrat. You just can't be insane with your policies. Like, okay, fine. California is going to be a blue state. Whatever. There's red states. There's blue states. That's what makes the world go round. That's America for you. But you cannot have a lawless society. You cannot pass laws in the name of equity, in the name of, well, we think this law could be deemed racist, and all you do is put innocent people at risk. That's why the voters passed Prop 36, which rolled back a progressive law from 10 years ago that downgraded nonviolent crimes to misdemeanors, including theft under $950 and some drug offenses. You just can't do it, John.
When a law disproportionately affects a segment of society, maybe it's not the law.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Got a minute, Stephen, in Kansas City. Let her rip.
Oh, Pete, this is rich, man. You talk about instant poetic justice. The looters arrested at Kamala's house. Thank goodness nothing happened, and I guess Kamala doesn't have the money for private firefighters for $2,000 an hour like the Kardashians, but I mean, this is emblematic. Victor Davis Hanson called it the DEI hydrogen bomb. I mean, this is proof of liberal policies, going amok in real time. Is Kamala going to be able to move back to her home? Is she going to have to stay at the Trump International Washington? We'll leave the light on for her. I mean, this is just mind blowing.
It is.
The Vice President of the United States, looters are at the Vice President's house.
Yep.
And then radio silence. No one commenting. No one.
Well, if they actually, Stephen, thank you, my man, do a deep dive into any of this, I mean, it will be a major indictment on the policies, whether it's the social policies, the criminal policies, or the environmental policies they promoted for decades. Coming up, the biggest bust of the weekend we'll tell you about next. Well, we know now that the Kansas City Chiefs will open up the attempt at a three-peat this Saturday. The game will kick off at 3:30 at Arrowhead Stadium. Where's a little Ric Flair for me there, Mark? What do you say, big man? Let's go. That's right. Chiefs-Texans, 3:30. Game will air on ESPN ABC. It will be the first game of the divisional round coming up this weekend. You'll have 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. And this comes after a wild card weekend that, for the most part, was an absolute dud. We got a good one last night, came down to a doink for the divisional.
The doink for the divisional again.
That's right.
Tirico did it again.
He did. Chris Collinsworth is like, I just see doinks every time. I'm sick of seeing the doinks, because they saw the Chiefs doink in the divisional championship. That would have been against the Chargers, right, on Sunday Night Football a few weeks back there, Mark. So the Commanders, formerly the Redskins. Do you have to dump me for saying that?
No.
Okay.
I think this is the first time they've made the playoffs as the Commanders.
Yes, I think so, too. First time they've won a playoff game in 20 years. The Washington Football Team, as they were briefly called. They beat the Buccaneers on a walk-off field goal last night, and I was watching the game, and I wanted to be in bed earlier, but the game turned out to be a great game, so I'm like, I'll stay up. And this kicker comes out there, and I don't know if you saw this last night, Mark, but this guy, he was like playing with his hair. He was fidgeting like crazy.
He had some ritual or something. I thought it was a little odd.
He was going nuts. I mean, it was Zane Gonzalez, his name. And he's getting out to attempt this field goal kick, and it's like a 35-yarder. These NFL kickers should do that in their sleep. And I'm like, man, this guy is fidgety. I don't know about this guy. He is not calm, cool, and collected right now. And then he hits the upright post, and it goes in for the game winner as time expired. But he literally came within a couple inches of missing that kick and the game going to overtime. It was just insane. So the Washington Commanders move on in the NFL playoffs. They will play next week, and that game is going to be also on Saturday. They'll be taking on the Lions. And then on Sunday, the Eagles will play the first game at 2 o'clock on NBC. That'll be against the winner of tonight's game between the Vikings and the Rams, which takes place at 7 p.m., and that will be in Arizona. It got moved from L.A. due to the wildfires. And then the 5:30 CBS game, Ravens and Bills. So CBS said, you know what, give me Josh Allen, give me Lamar Jackson. I don't blame them. That's probably the best game of the weekend. Let them have it. And then if the Chiefs win, the winner of that Ravens-Bills game will end up going to Arrowhead for a shot to get to the Super Bowl. So that's, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that's, what is most likely to happen at this point in time. But the Texans, they looked pretty good on Saturday. Got to hand it to them. Chargers got a bit of an early lead, and then the Texans woke up. That defense was outstanding against Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, and they got that thing rolling. Of course, the Chiefs played the Texans on Christmas, got a win by about 8 points, and we'll see how it plays on Saturday. The Chiefs are right now 7.5-point favorites in this game. So a touchdown plus favorites at home against the Texans as they attempt their three-peat. But all in all, it was a dud of an NFL weekend. And as much as I like the fact that the NFL made it so now only the 1 seed gets a bye, which put more emphasis on the regular season down the stretch, it used to be you'd have 6 teams from both conferences who would make the playoffs. And the 1 and the 2 seed would both get a bye. And then you'd have 3 seed play 6 seed, 4 seed play 5 seed. Well, they got one more team into the playoffs. Now 7 teams from each conference make the playoffs. And how it gets set up is only one team gets a bye. This year, the Chiefs got the bye in the AFC, and the Lions got the bye in the NFC. And then with the extra team, what happens? You get 2 more playoff games, which the TV partners love, because now you have 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5 during the wild card weekend. So instead of having 4 games, you get 6 games for the first weekend of the NFL playoffs, which once again, ESPN, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, they're all happy about that. But the games, for the most part, stink this weekend.
I agree. I do wish that they would skip the Monday night game and put it at noon on Saturday, though.
Yes, 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. If you're going to have it this way, it's totally unfair to have this Monday night game, and then the winner of this game has to go to Philadelphia. So think about that. You've got the Vikings in Arizona, the Rams supposed to be home, but they're in Arizona. The winner has a short week and has to go to Philly next Sunday.
Yeah.
That is a raw deal, man.
Yeah. I was just thinking it was the first game, but there's a Saturday night game, so they play. It's a quick turnaround nonetheless.
Yeah. They should do 3 Saturday, 3 Sunday during Wild Card weekend. Wipe your hands clean, and then move on to the divisional round.
Equitable of the NFL.
Yeah, it's not. It's not equitable. Where's the DEI from the NFL? Come on now, fellas.
I do like that the Chiefs get the early game on Saturday because they get an extra day of rest, technically.
If they get to the AFC Championship. Yes, you're right about that.
And then the Ravens and the Bills play the late game, so they'll have the shortest rest.
That is a very good point. If the Chiefs can win, they'll have the extra day. And also, if you're going to be out at the game, you got to be very happy about the 3:30 start because I'll tell you what, it is going to be cold this weekend. There's a chance of snow. We don't know yet what exactly that's going to look like come Saturday. But we're getting another one of these polar vortexes that's coming in this weekend. And it's going to kick in Saturday night into Sunday. So later this week's going to be pretty good. Highs of 40 on Thursday, 43 on Friday, and then Saturday, it's cloudy with a high of 32. But then once you get into Sunday, Sunday's high is 18, low is 6. Monday's high is 8 degrees, low is -2. The low on Tuesday is -6 degrees. So we dodged a bullet not having this game at Arrowhead on Sunday. It's going to be about 15 to 20 degrees warmer by having it on Saturday, and we get the afternoon slot on Saturday, which is even better. You're not going to freeze your tush off out there on Saturday night. So all in all, we're getting ready for that postseason run. We'll have Kendall Gammon on the show on Friday to preview the game, of course. And this morning at about 8:30, Paul Gallant, who filled in a couple of days on this show while I was out on a vacation around Christmas, is going to join us because he's based down in Houston. And he is a sports guy most of the time. He filled in, wanted to do some news talk for us, but he does a sports show down there in Houston. So we'll get the full rundown of what the Texans are looking at and how much confidence they might have coming out of that big win on Saturday. And we will also announce our plans for Inauguration Day at 7:20 this morning. We'll tell you what we have planned for Donald Trump's inauguration 1 week from today. We'll be joined by somebody who is partnering with us on this event at 7:20 this morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Mark Alford is going to be here at the top of the hour, 7:05, to get us set for the week ahead. And he's also going to be playing a big role in the inauguration next week as well. Well, you are seeing a failure of leadership at every level in California's government. And it can apply to what's going on here in Kansas City on both sides of our state line on not nearly as significant of a level. But we just got done talking to John Butler. He is the Jackson County GOP chairman, and we're going to be doing a watch party with those folks 1 week from today at Ray's Cafe in Independence. You may recall Ray's Cafe being in the news back in 2020 because, well, they basically told Jackson County to pound sand on their mask mandates. And, you know, you had the local governments coming after them for it. So that's why one of the reasons we picked our friends over at Ray's Cafe. It's going to be a good time. Plus, it's kind of like a brunchish time of day. So get some eggs, John, and have a good old time. Maybe a mimosa or two, and life will be good.
Yeah, it's RAE, just FYI.
Yes. Yes, RAE. And you'll see that when you
Facebook.
RSVP.
I follow them. They're always great-looking breakfast pictures up here to drool over in the morning. Now, they were in Blue Springs, weren't they? And moved to Independence. I think that was the
moved.
deal.
Yeah, they moved. So they are in Independence now. You can RSVP for next week at KCMOTalkRadio.com and join us on Monday. I'll be there. Kevin Keatsman will show up after his show at 10 o'clock. It's going to be a great time. But with that, you got to think about who's in charge of your local government and how much it matters. Now, we've seen the failures of local government leadership in Jackson County in particular. Frank White is Exhibit A as the county executive, right? I mean, you could not do a worse job as the Jackson County executive than Frank White has done. Whether it's on property taxes, whether it's on lacking leadership with the Chiefs and the Royals, whether it's on the COVID relief monies, that came down to the wire here the last couple of weeks. And all the while, the guy totally avoids the media, and then he's coaching first base for the Monarchs out in KCK. It's a fine hobby to have, but why you're the county executive and don't show up to meetings if the Monarchs are on the road to take on, you know, the South Dakota Jackrabbits or something like that is comical to me. You're running a county with 700,000 people in it. This isn't, Podunk Town. And Frank, of course, won his reelection a couple of years ago. He was up against Teresa Galvin, who was kind of like a, right-of-center Republican. You're never going to get a conservative running Jackson County. That's fine. She was kind of a good fit of just being a right-of-center, moderate Republican who would have at least done the basics well for the county. And she lost. Why? Well, Frank White was a pretty good baseball player at one point, and that's enough for some people. And plus, a lot of people just don't vote in these elections. Look at California. Karen Bass is the mayor. She beats Rick Caruso, who was a highly successful entrepreneur and businessman for L.A. mayor a couple of years ago, only by 10 points. And for a Democrat to only beat a Republican by 10 points in Los Angeles is a pretty big deal. But similar to what we see here in Kansas City and in our area local elections, only about 15 to 20% of people showed up to vote. And now look at what you get with this kind of failed leadership. You get fire hydrants that don't have water in them. You get dams that have been empty for years. You have multiple failures at the state level from Gavin Newsom when it comes to how you're maintaining the underbrush in these forests. They were supposed to be building more dams over the last decade. Nothing's been built. All these things that were supposed to be done in a state that charges you tons of money to live there. Highest state income tax in the country. And what do you get for it? You get complete and utter incompetence at every level of government, from state to city to county to everything in between. That's what you get for your money. The whole theory from these high tax cities and states is, well, you get better services when you live here. Yes, you got to pay more, but don't worry, we're the government and we will protect you and take care of you in better ways than those who don't have high taxes. And California is proving that is the furthest thing from the truth right now. And you have people losing everything, including their lives, in at least 24 cases now. The death toll has been going up, sadly, in recent days. It went from 5 up to about 24 right now as California gets set to wake up on a Monday morning. It's obviously 5:30 there. It's 7:30 here in Kansas City. And one of my hopes is that when we do events like this next week with the Jackson County GOP, folks will come out. They'll join us. Maybe you're somebody who has thought about getting involved locally, politically. And it's not, here's the thing, these local issues, these local races, it's not about just running. It's about just being involved. That can be through time, through money, seeing the change that you want to see at your school board level, your county commission level, your county executive level, city council races. These people matter in your day-to-day. And when push comes to shove and you're in some type of major tragedy, and God willing, you're never in a situation like Southern California is right now, but those are the people you're going to rely on. Like, trust me, Donald Trump's going to do a lot of good stuff for the country, I believe, when he gets in office a week from today. But so many of the things that you deal with, that we all deal with on our day-to-day, is controlled by and driven by what your county commission is doing. I mean, look at the other side of state line, Johnson County. That homeless shelter the county tried to throw up there in Lenexa. Thankfully, the people organized and the city council in Lenexa said that's not happening here. But if the county had its druthers, they would have put that homeless shelter up there in a heartbeat at the old La Quinta Inn and Suites. They would have done that, no questions asked. And that would have been a bad thing for a lot of people in that part of town. And it doesn't matter if Donald Trump's in the White House or Joe Biden's in the White House or Kamala Harris is in the White House, right? None of that matters when it comes to these issues. So the Trump stuff's great. There are big things for the country that will get done. But don't let the enthusiasm around that. In fact, what that should do is just drive the enthusiasm at the lower level of the political spectrum. Don't let it overshadow what's happening at the lower level of the political spectrum. So you can RSVP next week for next week at KCMOTalkRadio.com. And when it comes to Trump and everything he's got going on a week from today, this is Stephen Hayes. I want to play this, Mark. You're going to have to play it on your end. From Meet the Press yesterday, Stephen Hayes is a Republican, but the guy can't stand Donald Trump. He used to be on Fox. Now he's on Meet the Press. And here's what he had admitted yesterday on the Sunday show.
I think Donald Trump is at his absolute strongest right at this moment. You look at the fight that we were expecting in the House of Representatives, his pick, Speaker Mike Johnson, wasn't really a fight. Senate Republicans loving him right now. Most of his nominees are on track. You have corporate America bending the knee to Donald Trump. His legal problems seem to be over. This is peak Donald Trump right now.
This is peak Donald Trump right now, is what he says. And I don't care if you didn't vote for the guy. I don't care what you think about him. The reality is he has more political capital now than he's ever had in his political life. He got in there in 2016, 2017, and a lot of Republicans were like, well, this was just a mistake, a convenient mistake. Nobody liked Hillary. Trump kind of got lucky. He pulled the inside straight. And then as Trump's first term went along, he was kind of a little bit of a deer in the headlights. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just think he stepped in there and didn't realize how Washington, D.C. had actually been running for so many decades. He was kind of like, well, I won the presidency, so I get to do some stuff, right? And the bureaucracy was like, nah, that's not how this works around here. And then he would get pissed off and send out tweets, and that would create its own kind of sideshow. And, you know, he lost some political capital with all that stuff. You get through his term, 2020 comes around, COVID, the whole deal. We know how it ended. But now he gets back in there after 4 years of Joe Biden. People saw the left-wing experiment fail them. He wins the popular vote. First time a Republican's done that in 20 years. He won more electoral college votes than any Republican going back 35 years. 32, I guess, or 35 years to 88. And he's got more political juice than he's ever had. The legal problems are over. The landslide is complete. And the question now becomes, what does he do with it? Well, there's going to be a lot of executive orders on day one. They're going to extend the tax cuts as well. And there will be a lot of foreign policy decisions that are made that should improve the situation for America abroad. But you can't deny it, even if you didn't vote for him. He's in a better spot politically today than he was at any point during his first 4 years. And it's why I think history is going to show that Trump losing in 2020 was actually the best thing for him, politically speaking. This comeback is a much sexier story than had he won in 2020, because the last 4 years, you realize how fed up people would have been with Trump after 8 straight years. And if they didn't experience the Joe Biden experiment, they would not have realized how bad it could have been. Now people have lived through it. The voters decided on a different way. And that, when history looks back on it, is going to be very beneficial to Donald Trump. Let's be very clear. If you want to blame anybody for what is going on in California, one of the last people you could ever possibly think of blaming is Elon Musk. Also on that list is Donald Trump. If you want to blame anybody when it comes to the political arena in the wake of what has been a 50-plus, likely to be $100-plus billion tragedy in California, there is nobody to blame other than the party of blue. They have run the White House and the federal government for the last 4 years. They have run the state of California for decades. They have run Los Angeles for decades. You literally cannot point the finger. If you want to start doing that, you cannot point the finger at anybody on the other side. It is impossible to do that. But it doesn't mean a brand and a company like MSNBC won't try. I mean, they are so shameless, they have shed half their viewers since the election. Even some of their diehards apparently have woken up to the lies that they have been fed for far too long on that channel. It's why they're hemorrhaging viewers. So leave it to Jen Psaki, former White House press secretary for Pops, who's now got a weekend show, who's somehow tied and is most offended when it comes to the LA fires by things that Elon Musk is putting up on social media. Let's roll.
So I guess none of us should have been shocked this week when Elon Musk posted that the Los Angeles Fire Department prioritized DEI over saving lives and homes. That's an exact quote. That appeared to be a disgusting dig at the city's fire chief, Kristen Crowley, who has served in the department for decades, rising through the ranks to become the first female and LGBTQ fire chief in LA's history. Musk also amplified a post this week from conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. Yes, that guy. He's still around. Alex Jones wrote that Los Angeles fires are part of a larger globalist plot to wage economic warfare and deindustrialize the United States before triggering total collapse. I mean, not sure that guy's okay. Musk responded to that post by writing, true. Yes, just to repeat here. That's just the richest man in the world and the best friend of the incoming president, confirming to his 200 million followers that he thinks the devastating wildfires are a part of a globalist plot. And so now we're back in this vicious cycle where Trump and his new bestie push lies about a natural disaster, and then right-wing media runs with them.
There is Jen Psaki. Alex Jones. Oh. I'm getting pissed now. Oh, my gosh. He got a mention there on MSNBC, John.
Memo to Jen Psaki. Peppermint Patty called and wants her image and likeness back.
How much is she paying for that NIL deal?
Yeah.
Like these college players. That's
Charles
what I want to know.
And the Peanuts organization should be getting some money.
I mean, imagine being more outraged by something Elon Musk is putting up on social media and things that Alex Jones is writing about on social media than what your own government has done to help make this crisis worse than it ever needed to be. I don't want to say create the crisis. That's unfair. But certainly make it worse than it ever should have been, John.
Well, and she had to slow down because there's too many initials in LGBTQ.
You got it wrong.
IA in LA.
You got it. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And she goes on to make that point, like, oh, how dare Elon Musk say that LA was more focused on DEI than keeping people safe. They literally told you that. I have a clip here from Janice Quinones, and I apologize if I screwed up her name.
Just like John Quinones.
Yes. She is the Los Angeles water chief. She's the lady who's been in charge, literally her job, and she makes $750,000 a year to do this job. Mark's wondering how he can go work for the water department in L.A. right now. I see him looking on Monster.com for jobs in Los Angeles for the water department. She went on a radio show, KBLA, and literally talked about one of the things that she was drawn to the job over was, well, to promote equity. I kid you not.
You call it powered by equity, and I know that it's been really important for the DWP to put an equity lens on everything.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the number one thing that attracted me to this role.
Stop right there. Just pause it if you can.
Coming from the communities.
The number one thing that attracted her to this role was putting a lens of equity on the job. Are you kidding me? You're in charge of the water department. Make sure there's water in dams. Make sure the dams are working. Make sure waters can get to fire hydrants in Southern California where wildfires are not a new thing. That's your job, ma'am.
I'm not able to get the job because I'm a white dude.
Yeah, that's true. You're toast.
I looked that up during the last segment.
Yeah, maybe you can do like a Justin Trudeau blackface. We'll try to at least get you an interview, Mark. I don't know. Just an idea. But you have the individual who's in charge of the water department literally saying that what drove her to the job was not like making sure people had water and making sure the second largest city in the country was, prepared for needing water in wildfires. It was putting a lens of equity onto the freaking water department. So when Elon Musk shares a post saying DEI is indirectly basically causing these fires, and Jen Psaki's all bent out of shape over it, imagine if she took that kind of approach at the actual people that should be getting looked at right now in the wake of this tragedy. Let's continue here with Janice Quinones, the LA Water Department.
You call it powered by equity, and I know that it's been really important for the DWP to put an equity lens on everything.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the number one thing that attracted me to this role. Coming from the communities that I come, seeing what I've seen through my career in utilities and through the military. I've been in the Coast Guard 19 and a half years now, so I got 6 more months to qualify for my 20 years, which was my original goal.
Wow. Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. It's important to me that everything we do, it's with an equity lens and social justice and making sure that we right the wrongs that we've done in the past from an infrastructure perspective and that we involve the community in that process. And this utility is serious about it, is authentic about it. And so I'm just super excited to be part of that movement.
Well, I'm glad she was excited to be part of a movement that had nothing to do with the job. She was excited about the equity part of being the water chief in Los Angeles. Not as excited about, making sure the dams are filled. Not as excited about, making sure water can get to the fire hydrants. But excited about making sure that people who look differently are in certain jobs, which means nothing to how you do the job effectively. Way to go. Turns out Elon Musk is right, and Jen Psaki at MSNBC is once again wrong, and that is your least shocking news of the day. Coming up next on KCMO, the Plaza. We've got some new numbers on empty storefronts. It's not good. We'll share it next. 1 hour to go, 9:05. Good morning. It is great to have you here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. Welcome in. Kevin Keatsman, Uncanceled, coming up in 1 hour. So on the plaza, we've got new numbers that show there are now 40 empty spaces when it comes to storefronts on the plaza. 40. More than 3 dozen empty storefronts plagued the plaza despite Kansas City promises of improvement. This was on Tony's Kansas City yesterday, and it comes from Joyce KC on the Facebook page, and she has racked up the numbers to 40 empty storefronts. That is embarrassing, but I also can't sit here and say I'm at all shocked by that. Are you? The plaza was already on a downward trajectory before COVID, and it wasn't necessarily the fault of the plaza then. It was just kind of how the world was changing. You had people looking to open stores and higher-end stores in parts of Johnson County, up north. You had the American consumer changing how they were going about their business, a lot of online shopping. And the whole idea of like driving down to the plaza or driving anywhere just for like the scene was less and less of a thing. And then comes COVID, and then comes George Floyd and the Summer of Love. And that expedites what is already a bad development on the plaza. And while the plaza didn't get the treatment of some of the major downtown areas around the country, we know that was the home of a lot of the protests and really all the protests that took place in Kansas City during that time. And then, of course, you also had a management company that was totally inept. I mean, I know business owners who have storefronts down there on the plaza, and they will be the first ones to tell you, I mean, our infrastructure when it comes to plumbing and things like that are, 100 years old at this point, John.
We get the periodic thing of let's see, youth loitering, too. It's kind of cyclical. It was roller skating and sidewalk skating in the 70s, and then in the 80s it kind of became cruising. So they put the horse carriages out to slow down traffic going around through there to discourage that. And then now we have the old story that, kids don't have anything to do in the neighborhood, so let them just roam the plaza. Remember,
too, about 10 years ago, right before I got here, Sly James was thrown into the bushes when gunshots rang out on the plaza. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that was during Sly James's tenure as the mayor. And to his credit, he put in a curfew where he basically said, listen, this is ridiculous. We're not going to have young teens out loitering around the plaza late at night. We're not going to have it. And that was after that high-profile situation took place about a decade ago when his security had to toss him in the bushes because gunfire rang out near him from a bunch of kids and a bunch of thugs. And then, of course, the curfew was dropped. And then it was, was it last summer or 2 summers ago when... was it the Five Guys down there? It's one of those burger chains. Shake Shack. Shake Shack.
First place.
Yeah, the Shake Shack started saying, you know what? We're not letting people in after a certain time of night.
6 o'clock, I think, on Saturday.
Yeah.
Something got crazy.
Yeah, that's when they started having issues. And they said, we don't care what you think about it. We're not allowing this. And we have kind of swung the pendulum back a little bit. The city did start putting more of a priority on patrolling the plaza, which is good. But here's what happens. When you're short 300 cops, which Kansas City is, well, if you're moving cops from one part of town to the plaza, what ends up happening? The high crime, the high homicide areas, the high crime areas in Kansas City, those people start saying, well, they don't care about the urban core. They're just worried about, the people walking around the plaza. So you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. What do you laugh? That's how it goes. You know the drill.
No, that's exactly right. But meanwhile, back on the plaza, snatch and grab left and right.
Yes.
But the cops are just patrolling the kids. They're not worried. No, come on.
You know, and I know exactly what's going on here.
The choir, sorry.
Exactly. No, it's cool. I'm glad. I'm glad you confirmed it because some people need that reminder.
Yeah.
Right. But anytime you get more cops on the plaza, you're going to get people in the urban core saying they don't care about us. They just care about the white people on the plaza. I mean, it's cyclical. This conversation's been going on for decades. It always just comes back around. Now, if you had a fully funded, or I should say fully staffed, we do have a fully funded police department in fairness. You can't say the city or the police department's getting shortchanged by the city right now. You just can't make the argument. They're funding it at 25% of the budget. They've gotten more money. They need to get fully staffed. And that is difficult. And this is one of the legacies of 2020. They defunded the police without having to financially defund the police. They tried to in Kansas City in 2021, don't forget. Right after the budget was set that April, the mayor then came out and tried a defund attempt, where basically he was going to ask the police department to reapply for the funds that they had earmarked a month earlier in the city budget. He will claim it wasn't a defund. He and I have talked about this on the air, and I completely disagree with him, and he will never convince me otherwise, and I'll probably never convince him otherwise. That's fine, whatever. But at this point, the question is, how do you get more people to become cops? And Tony Luetkemeyer brought this up last hour on this show, that with Governor-elect Mike Kehoe in Missouri set to become governor today, it's Inauguration Day down in Jeff City, one of the things they want to do is figure out how to get more people to become cops. They've given them raises. They've dropped the residency requirement. And let's be honest, while I think those are good policies, it's not really working. It's not. I mean, anyone who convinced you or tried to convince you that it would become a panacea in Kansas City once you dropped a residency requirement and gave them some raises, oh my gosh, there'd be people applying out the wazoo to become a cop here in town. No. Now, we told you that was unlikely to happen. As much as I agreed with the policy, it's antiquated to say that you have to live inside of city limits to be a cop anywhere. But it's much deeper than that. If you are a cop or you want to be a cop, are you going to be a cop in a town where you don't believe the prosecutors have your back? Certainly that was the case under Gene Peters Baker. Look at the deal with Eric DeValcanaire. Cops in this town said, screw this. I'm here to help. I'm risking my life every day. But at the same time, am I going to go out there and do proactive police work when my own prosecutor is dying to throw me in jail, especially when it fits a political narrative? Heck no. And can you blame them? I can't. I don't know how you could. So you have that part of it. You still have the fallout from George Floyd and how that's impacted major American cities and law enforcement recruitment around the country. It's not unique to Kansas City, but there are fewer people than ever who want to be cops. I've talked to plenty of cops where they've basically said, we don't want our kids doing this for a living. And that's horrible. That's sad because so much of being a cop was like handed down through generations, right? It was like the family business. Dad's a cop, son's a cop, maybe daughter's a cop. I mean, that's just, it was kind of in the DNA of law enforcement families. And folks who serve the public oftentimes come from families where it was just part of how they grew up. But now you've explicitly got people in law enforcement saying, I don't want my kids to do this. And if they're going to do it, let's be honest, you'd rather them do it in Overland Park than in Kansas City, Missouri. And that's a shame. So this is now a generational setback for the law enforcement community. And it's true in Kansas City. It's true in St. Louis. It's true in Chicago, New York, and many major American cities. And it's sad. But the people that were out there advocating for defund the police in the summer of 2020 are getting their own people killed. That's the reality. And then part of the fallout on not having enough police is you don't know whether or not to put your resources on the plaza, on power and light, or in the urban core. Because you don't have the bodies to do it all right now. And it is going to take years to turn this thing around because it's a fine line. You can't accept. I mean, you talk to cops who have been doing this for 3 decades in this town. They'll tell you when they applied to be a cop, they had hundreds of people they were up against on these applications. Now it's like, man, do you have 2 arms, 2 legs, half a brain? I'm not saying it's that simple. I'm not trying to be derogatory towards folks who are, becoming cops right now. But my point is, the facts are the standards based on the numbers are not what they were a generation ago. The acceptance rate is far higher than it was a generation ago just because of the amount of people that are applying today versus 25, 30, 35 years ago. And just the the facts are, based on the numbers, you're going to get lower quality. 913-408-7957. That's our text line and our studio line here on KCMO Talk Radio. Let's go to Mark. He's in Independence. What's up, Mark? You're on KCMO, my man.
Hey, Mondo, you're hitting the nail right on the head. Besides, people need to learn how to parent their kids at a very young age and take control of your neighborhood. Burning candles, at night and having vigils, that's all well and good, but that doesn't solve the problem. But the main reason I called is that you notice the competition for police has crossed boundaries, so to speak. The Springfield Police Department advertises on Kansas City radio for police officers.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely. I mean, they need them all over the state. I mean, and if you're having a tough time in Springfield, you're having a tough time in Kansas City and St. Louis.
That's right. My brother lives in Springfield, and he said the same thing after the George Floyd stuff. The crime rate and gang type activity has increased tremendously.
Mm-hmm. And think about this. The people that advocated for it, who gets hurt the most? And Mark knows this, and I know many of you know this. The people living in the most dangerous neighborhoods in Kansas City are the ones who get impacted the most. Not those who put up their yard signs and their cute Facebook posts and tried to be woke at the time and could live wherever they want. It is the people who could not get out of their poverty-stricken neighborhoods that have the bulk of the crime and the bulk of the homicides. But I hope your virtue-signaling Facebook post made you feel better. 913-408-7957, our caller of the day coming up at the bottom of the hour. We've got you as well, 913-408-7957. And how about a feel-good story involving a couple of Chiefs players at church over the weekend? We'll share with you coming up. We announced it this morning, our inauguration watch party. Going to be at Ray's Cafe in Independence 1 week from today, 11 a.m., We'll be out there for the inauguration watch party that is with our friends at the Jackson County Republican Party. So we hope that you'll join us next Monday. I know a lot of folks are off for MLK Day. So get a bite to eat at Ray's, watch the inauguration, watch Donald Trump get inaugurated for the second time in the last 10 years or so. And it's going to be a great time. So we hope you'll be out there. I'll be out there. Keatsman will be out there. And if John wants to swing by, he'll be out there.
Hey, if you get out there today, I see the blueberry pancakes and sausage special on the Facebook. That looks good.
Gosh. Yeah, that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the breakfast dreaming.
Is that what we call show research?
Yeah, that's what you're doing? I'm doing. Yeah, field research.
Okay.
Market research.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, that's it.
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. But I've not been to Ray's Cafe before. You may recall them during COVID. They told Jackson County to pound sand on their mask mandates, so they got a lot of attention for that. They were right. And we figured it's a great place to do our inauguration watch party next week, John.
Yep, that was while they were out in Blue Springs, so they just moved on over to Independence where they said, no worries, come on down.
Yeah, yep. Gosh, can't believe that was 5 years ago now, almost 5 years ago now. It's just crazy. So yesterday, of course, the Chiefs were waiting their opponent in the NFL playoffs. Can you believe I like to flip around the dial, of course, make sure I know what our competitors are doing around Kansas City radio. A major radio show in this town did not know that the NFL playoffs reseeds. So basically, the Chiefs didn't really know who they were playing until the Broncos had officially lost to the Bills. Then you knew they were going to be taking on the Texans, right? That's how it works. But major radio show in this town thought it was like a bracket, like the NCAA tournament. And they're going on and on and on. Yeah, they're going to play the Chiefs or the Chargers, Texans winner. It's like, no, not. I mean, that was always likely if all the favorites won. But it's like, that's not how this works. It's no wonder that they're wrong on a lot of other things as well. But I was just like, man, this is just sports NFL 101 type stuff. You've got to know this. And there's multiple men on the show. It's like, prove to me you're not a real man without proving to me you're not a real man. NFL playoffs reseed, folks, okay? That's how they do it every round. With that being said, yesterday was obviously the weekend was an off day for the Chiefs. So what happened? Offensive lineman Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey decide they're going to church. Got to love that from those guys. Well, a woman in town, Gretchen Einert, accidentally parked in a huge pile of snow because she was late for church service. And when she got back to her car yesterday, she was unable to get her car out of the snow. Enter Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. They used their Sunday off to go to church, and they were able to help push her car out of the snow when they left. And if you haven't seen the video, it is on social media. We'll put it up on the KCMO Talk Radio social media pages as well. First off, it's a smaller car, so it kind of looks like it's one of those strongman competitions where these two guys are like, all right, how far and how fast can we push a little Toyota Corolla down the street out of a snowbank? All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, boys, go. I just love it, John. It was fantastic.
Right, Trey Smith to Creed Humphreys. Hand me that Prius.
I was most nervous when she starts driving. I think she should have just put it neutral and they could have pushed it fine.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You know what? That was like on Friday morning when I helped this guy dig out of the K10 ramp. I stopped on the way to work on Friday morning. We had that little snow and ice, and he was stuck right there on the ramp, and I pulled over and helped him. I had a snow shovel in the car. This is the guy that I told you about on Friday who fell face first in the snow. He was so dramatic about it. He was like my age. A guy was acting like he was being asked to deadlift 500 pounds. It's like, and he was in good shape. I mean, it's not like he was an out-of-shape guy. Oh, I'm so tired, he says to me. It's like, well, bro, I gave you the shovel. I ain't shoveling. You shovel. I'll watch you. I'll help. I'll make sure the car stay out of the way. So then what I realized is he was in all-wheel drive, which he should have never been in that position to begin with. But a lot of it for people who are screwing up in the snow are just people who don't know what they're doing. Because he's not rocking it back and forth. We dig him out. First off, he didn't dig out behind his back wheels. I'm like, dude, you're not going anywhere. You can dig out the front all you want. You got to dig out the back. So he starts digging out the back. Then he gets in the car, and he's slamming on the drive way too hard on the accelerator. I'm like, buddy, just rock it. Back, forth, reverse, drive, reverse. Just rock it, man. At one point, my car's 10 yards in front of him, and I'm like, if this dude spins out of this thing, he's gonna smash into my car with the way he's rolling. So I worked with him a little bit. But what I realized is, to Mark's point, she probably could have been in neutral when you've got two dudes combining for like 650 pounds and great shape. Not two fat guys, obviously. Two NFL caliber athletes pushing you out of the snow. Just put it in neutral and get yourself out of there, and you're going to be A-okay. But it is a great moment for Kansas City and a cool moment for the Chiefs as well. Coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio, we will get to our caller of the day. And it was about California, which remains one of the top stories in the country. On the text line, Pete, tell us the radio station. All right, the radio station rhymes with KMBC. Is that good enough for you?
Let me see.
All right, caller of the day next.